It is over for Rachel Zegler. Her career is done. She will be lucky if she makes it on a direct-to-DVD Steven Seagal movie at this point.
The controversies surrounding Disney's Snow White remake show that we are still in the thick of the culture wars. Oh, have you been following the Snow White?
Actually, the first time hearing of this.
Really?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good for you.
Well,
It's happening, and definitely not the way Disney imagined. Theater chains across the country are quietly scrubbing Snow White from their schedules, with showtimes vanishing like a magic trick gone wrong. Entire screenings are being pulled without warning. Why? Some theaters are reportedly cutting their losses early, pointing to embarrassingly low attendance and brutal audience feedback. Viewers walked in expecting Disney magic and left confused, disappointed, or worse, completely indifferent.
I mean, they're projected to lose between 2 and 400 million on this.
It's over. It's a wrap. Because her entire career rested on this Snow White movie being a success, and it ain't looking good.
Online, things are getting brutal. Viewers are flooding social media with photos of empty theaters, roasting the film with captions like, 7 dwarfs, 7 tickets sold. Meme accounts? They're thriving, turning the flop into comedy gold. And the hashtag Snow White flop is trending. Fans aren't just ignoring the film, they're actively rejecting it. Across forums, YouTube comments, and Twitter threads, people are calling this not just a misstep, but a betrayal of everything Disney once represented. This isn't your typical box office bomb. It's a cultural implosion, a fairy tale gone completely off the rails, one that's not just missing the mark. It's crashing, burning, and landing squarely on Hollywood's Never Do This Again list.
Look at this, 46%. That's horrible. That's a disaster, bro. That ain't good. You might as well just, I typically say just release this garbage on Disney Plus, but nah. I think they should just forget this. Just try to erase this movie from existence completely at this point.
And smack in the middle of this chaotic meltdown, Rachel Zegler. Once praised as Hollywood's next big thing, she's now, fairly or not, become the face of Disney's biggest embarrassment in decades. What started as a breakout role has turned into a cautionary tale, playing out in real time for the world to see.
I just mean that it's no longer 1937, and we absolutely wrote a Snow White that is she's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about true love. She's dreaming about becoming the leader she knows she can be.
Snow White is running for president.
I'm launching my campaign. I am.
I don't want to gag myself on the air, so I won't do that. You know what bothers me more than anything about this? These stories are invented by women.
But why are theaters really pulling the movie? That's where things get messy. Disney dumped over $250 million into this project. Yeah, you heard that right. $250 million to remake a story that didn't just entertain generations, it built the empire. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs wasn't just another animated film. It was the foundation of Walt Disney's entire dream, the first full-length animated feature in history. It didn't just set the bar, it created the bar. So, with that kind of legacy behind it, fans expected something magical. Instead, they got a politically charged Frankenstein of a remake that left audiences scratching their heads and walking out.
Housewives throughout Germany made up these stories, and then the Brothers Grimm went around and collected them and found them. These are the creations of women, and they spoke into the minds of children. And they weren't forcing children to be anything. They were talking about things that children already know are there, like witches and evil and fear and true love. They weren't creating girls who wanted to fall in love. Girls want to fall in love. It's part of the beauty of life.
It's almost poetic, just not in the way Disney intended. Instead of honoring the 1937 masterpiece that launched Walt Disney into legend status, they gutted it. And not with subtlety. No dwarfs, no Prince Charming, no whimsical love story. Just a reworked tale wrapped in CGI glitter, clunky dialogue, and empowerment slogans that came off more like a lecture than a fairy tale. The magic, gone. Replaced by a checklist of modern-day talking points, the Seven Dwarfs, iconic, beloved, and deeply symbolic, were scrapped and swapped out for a bizarre band of magical forest wanderers. Why? Reportedly to avoid offending anyone. But in the process, they managed to offend everyone. From fantasy purists to the dwarf acting community, critics called it what it felt like: erasure, dressed up as inclusivity.
And then they couldn't put dwarfs because this is just so typical of the left. The progressives always finding a way to find their way back to doing something not progressive. You'd think the most progressive thing would be get people jobs, and dwarfs want to work.
Like
an honest
golden employment opportunity for dwarves.
There's not that many scripts that come down the pike.
No, there's 7 of them.
That has, and there's 7 dwarf jobs here. But because I think it was Peter Dinklage said this is, this is not right. This is demeaning. And they were like, what? We just want to work. We're dwarves.
Then came the charming prince, or rather the lack of one. He was cut from the story entirely, reportedly over consent issues, as Disney attempted to reframe the tale through a modern lens. They claimed the kiss in the original felt outdated. Fans, on the other hand, said the rewrite felt forced. And Snow White herself? She was no longer the kind, dreamy-hearted girl who sang with birds and saw the good in everyone. Instead, she was reimagined as a sharp, no-nonsense heroine who didn't want a prince, didn't need a man, and didn't seem to enjoy being part of a fairy tale at all. She was presented as a revolutionary figure, less about magic, more about messaging. No singing at the wishing well, no daydreaming of love, just direct challenges to the patriarchy and, yes, reported demands for hourly compensation for her time in costume. Sound empowering? Maybe on paper. But to Disney's core audience, it didn't land. What they saw wasn't empowerment, it was erasure. They felt like a legacy was being dismantled, a treasured childhood story rewritten by corporate committee. And worst of all, it didn't feel authentic. It felt like a marketing stunt, with a $250 million price tag.
Rachel Zegler spent her energy, her time, leading up to the release of this Snow White movie, shitting on the origin, right? And not to mention that the people that voted for Trump tend to be people that appreciate more wholesome values, traditional values, people that tend to have kids, right? Because that other side, right? The woke weirdos, the lizards, these people, they don't believe in having kids.
And it all spiraled from one interview. Rachel Zegler was supposed to be Disney's next golden girl, the rising star fresh off her breakout in West Side Story. She had it all: youth, talent, powerhouse vocals, and a ticket into the most iconic fairy tale role of all time. But the moment she sat down to promote the Snow White remake, the magic unraveled faster than Disney's PR team could draft a damage control memo. Instead of embracing the role with reverence, Rachel came out swinging, mocking the original story that generations had grown up loving. She didn't just critique the plot, she dismissed it. She called the prince a stalker, implied the love story was outdated, and claimed the film no longer had relevance in today's world. Her tone, detached, cold, and strikingly arrogant for someone stepping into such a legendary role. And then came the quote, the viral soundbite that made everything explode, turning a shaky PR rollout into a full-blown PR disaster.
I think Rachel Zegler probably wants this too. I think Rachel Zegler, she probably wants people to forget about this movie. She wants people to forget this entire experience. She would probably appreciate Disney just making this movie go away.
Not long after the film's lukewarm debut, fresh rumors swirled. Disney was already planning a full-blown reset behind closed doors. A second attempt was allegedly in the works, complete with new writers, a new direction, and yes, Jenna Ortega's name popped up again. The internet lit up, but this time the excitement was mixed with fatigue. Some fans questioned whether Disney's endless obsession with reboots was actually hurting more than helping. Still, a few held on to hope that, with the right touch, the fairy tale magic could somehow be revived. But even as reboot rumors gained traction, one whisper refused to die. That Rachel Zegler had privately confided Peter Dinklage's viral remarks had unfairly shifted the weight of controversy onto her shoulders, and she had been carrying it ever since.
Snow White is the first American feature-length animated movie, 1937. It's one of the most beloved movies of all time.
Allegedly, Rachel Zegler felt completely blindsided by the constant script overhauls, and deeply frustrated that she had become the scapegoat for a production drowning in controversy from the very beginning. No recordings or hard evidence ever surfaced, but for those who watched the dwarf discourse hijack the narrative for months, the rumor sounded believable enough to catch fire. At this point, some fans began shifting the blame. They argued that Zegler, with her influence and visibility, could have spoken up much earlier if she truly believed the story was spiraling out of control.
Disney, despite losing over $1 billion on their last 4 movies, as they continue to shove woke politics into people's faces who just want to go to the movie, laugh, cry, and go home. Look, people don't want to be lectured when they're watching a movie, and they certainly don't want to be told that they're bad people. But that's what Disney continues to do.
While Peter Dinklage's comments definitely stirred the pot, critics were quick to point out that the film's biggest problems ran much deeper. Sloppy pacing, flat characters, and clunky, heavy-handed messaging. And those issues? They had nothing to do with the dwarfs at all. Still, the rumor that Zegler blamed Dinklage gave some people a neat, convenient villain to pin it all on. It was an easy narrative for a production desperate to explain the chaos. As for Disney, the studio stuck to its usual playbook: stay silent, avoid the drama, and hope the public moves on. Maybe in time, the Snow White saga will just be remembered as another botched remake. But that lingering rumor that Zegler pointed the finger at Dinklage gave the disaster an aftershock that just wouldn't die down.
I know this point has been made, but this truly is the worst casting, maybe in the history of the film industry.
This wasn't just a box office flop. It turned into a full-blown case study in how behind-the-scenes clashes and public controversies can completely derail a production. Journalists who tried to get comments from either star were met with stone-cold silence or carefully worded deflections, and honestly, it made sense. Dinklage, famous for challenging industry norms, likely felt no need to justify his stance. Zegler, if she did hold him responsible, probably knew that saying anything would only throw gasoline on the fire. One direct comment could have reignited debates over representation, creative control, and blame, transforming an already chaotic disaster into an unstoppable media circus.
This is someone who is as entitled as, I don't need your business.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business. Thanks.
You know what? Maybe Disney does. Maybe you're a tool, you're a pawn in this film. You didn't write it. You didn't direct it. You have nothing to do with the creation of Snow White. Right. You should shut up and do the job.
Even as the headlines started to fade, the Snow White disaster refused to die. It lived on through Reddit threads, fan debates, and nonstop whispers in Hollywood circles. The messy cocktail of creative clashes, misguided modernization, and on-set tension exposed something much bigger. The impossible tightrope studios now walk when trying to reinvent beloved classics in a hypersensitive era. The rumored feud between Zegler and Dinklage became more than just gossip. It turned into a symbol of something deeper. It wasn't just about two stars clashing. It was about the fragile state of modern filmmaking where even the best intentions can collapse under the crushing weight of fan expectations and industry pressure.
It's the thing that really shocks me about this story, Disney and all these media companies, they invest hundreds of millions of dollars into these projects, right? Have they ever thought about maybe like a little bit of vulnerability study, opposition research, that sort of thing before you go and hire some Zoomer who's a lunatic?
In the months that followed, as Disney pushed out new films across theaters and streaming platforms, one thing became clear: the ghost of Snow White was everywhere. Every time a fresh remake hit the screen, comparisons were immediate and unavoidable. If the project pulled off a smart mix of modern values and classic heart, headlines hailed it as proof that Disney had finally learned from the Snow White disaster. But if a remake missed the mark, critics rolled their eyes and muttered, "Here we go again." The fallout from Snow White stretched far beyond ticket sales. It became a cautionary tale, a cultural yardstick for how not to reboot a classic. For Rachel Zegler, the film's shadow was inescapable. Like it or not, it had become a defining chapter in her early career. For Peter Dinklage, it served as a reminder of how one well-intentioned comment could explode into a firestorm. It reaffirmed his role as a bold voice for representation, but also exposed just how fragile the line is between advocacy and unintended chaos.
So now, as the movie comes out, the two biggest stars in this movie can't stand each other to the point where they can't be in the same room, which forced Disney, in their infinite wisdom, to cut back on doing a formal premiere.
Adding even more fuel to the fire were whispers coming from inside Disney itself. Some insiders reportedly wrestled with whether to continue backing the project in public or just let it fade into the background quietly. Behind the scenes, there were claims that the studio's marketing team attempted a soft rebrand, leaning into the film's messaging about empowerment and inclusivity. But by that point, the damage was already done. Calling it a disaster had become second nature in media circles. Any effort to reframe the narrative was drowned out by leaks, rough test screening reactions, and months of nonstop internet discourse. For Zegler's supporters, the rumor that she blamed Dinklage was both intriguing and unsettling. They understood the urge to trace the chaos back to a single spark, but they also knew the problems ran deeper. An unstable script, jarring tone shifts, and confusion over how to modernize a beloved fairy tale without alienating the fan base. All of it pointed to a bigger creative mess.
Kind of a Disney magic that had depth, that had absolute, it was riveting. And it's based, of course, on a Brothers Grimm story.
Maybe the idea that Dinklage's remarks were a tipping point made emotional sense to Zegler, even if she never said it out loud. And once the internet got wind of that theory, it latched on with full force. Just another dramatic chapter in the endless post-mortem of a film that, from day one, seemed destined to trip over itself. Meanwhile, Peter Dinklage had already moved on. He quietly shifted focus to new projects and, in interviews, kept the spotlight on his future roles or reflected on his past work. When Snow White came up, if it came up, he either sidestepped the topic or spoke carefully about the need for nuance in modern storytelling. There was little incentive for him to revisit the controversy. Whether he even knew about the rumors of Zegler's frustration remained unclear. Some insiders speculated he'd heard the whispers, but chose not to respond. Others believed the gossip barely reached him at all, just more noise buried beneath the mountain of issues that defined the film's chaotic legacy.
Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed, because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
The fiasco reignited a bigger conversation about the future of Disney's live-action remakes. For years, the studio leaned heavily on nostalgia, reviving animated classics with star-studded casts, sleek visuals, and a promise of modern updates. Some worked at the box office, even if critics weren't thrilled. Others disappeared without a trace. But Snow White was different. This wasn't just another remake. It was Disney's first animated feature from 1937, a cornerstone of its entire legacy. Touching that kind of cinematic foundation came with weight and risk. If Peter Dinklage's critique truly triggered a panicked creative pivot, and that pivot threw the story off balance, then the whole situation revealed just how delicate these modern reimaginings can be. Online, debates exploded. Some praised Dinklage for raising valid concerns about representation that studios often overlook. Others argued Disney should have anticipated the blowback and built a better plan, instead of scrambling to fix things mid-production. For Zegler's fans, the rumor that she blamed Dinklage was either dismissed as social media gossip or defended as a totally human reaction to a sinking ship. She never confirmed anything publicly, but the rumor alone was enough to keep Twitter threads, Reddit posts, and TikTok breakdowns buzzing for weeks. In the end, the Snow White meltdown wasn't about one star or one misstep. It was a perfect storm. Colliding visions, confused messaging, the impossible task of modernizing a fairy tale without losing the soul of the original, and sky-high expectations for every Disney release, it all came crashing down. The rumored tension between Zegler and Dinklage became a symbol of a bigger failure, a film that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Instead of blending old and new with care, it swung wildly between clumsy nostalgia and aggressive course-correcting, and in the process, satisfied no one. In time, Snow White 2025 may be remembered as a cautionary tale for studios walking the tightrope of remakes. And for actors, it's a stark reminder that even offhand comments, whether theirs or someone else's, can ripple across an entire production in unexpected ways. If the rumors were true, Rachel Zegler learned that lesson the hard way. And if they weren't, it still proved one thing. Sometimes, internet speculation alone is enough to shape the legacy of a film that never stood a chance.
Even if everything worked perfectly, it would have been almost impossible for this movie to succeed, because you're comparing it to one of the most beloved films of all time and a truly groundbreaking movie.
If you're a studio, if you're a director, if you're a casting director, you've got to think twice or three times before hiring her. Listen,
as the entertainment world keeps moving, fresh controversies are bound to emerge. But Snow White 2025 has already cemented its place as a cautionary tale of what can go terribly wrong with a remake. Should Jenna Ortega, or any other actress, take on the iconic role in the future, she'll be doing it under the looming shadow of this failed attempt, with fans watching closely to see if Disney finally learned its lesson. Whether or not Rachel Zegler truly blamed Peter Dinklage, the rumor has become part of the film's legacy. It now serves as a symbol of how progressive goals, no matter how well-intended, can unravel under bad timing, poor planning, and messy execution. But this wasn't just a feud between two stars. It exposed a deeper industry struggle between honoring legacy and embracing change, between pleasing loyal fans and pushing bold studio strategies, and between an actor's craft and the noise that surrounds it. Snow White deserved a thoughtful, balanced refresh for a new generation. Instead, it got lost in controversy, tone confusion, and clashing visions, leading many to see it as a huge missed opportunity. Zegler's alleged frustration with Dinklage, it was just one human thread in a production pulled apart by too many voices and not enough cohesion. There's no neat ending to this story. Disney may have quietly taken the hit, but whether future remakes show signs of true course correction, that remains to be seen.